Here's a horror story based on the image of a frightened woman in bed with a ghostly figure lurking behind her. Whispers in the dark. Emily had always been a light sleeper, but lately, the nights had become unbearable. Ever since moving into the old Victorian house on Willow Lane, she had been plagued by a series of unsettling dreams that felt far too real. The house was eerily silent at night, save for the occasional creaking of wooden floors, as though unseen feet were pacing just outside her bedroom door. She dismissed it as the house settling at first. Then the whispers began. At precisely 3:13 a.m. each night, she would awaken to the sound of soft murmurs. Indistinct words floated through the dark, curling around her like cold fingers. She tried to convince herself it was the wind, but deep down, she knew better. Someone was in the house. One night, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, Emily decided she'd had enough. She would prove to herself that it was all in her head. Armed with her phone, she set up a recording app, placed it on her nightstand, and forced herself to sleep. When she awoke the next morning, her breath hitched in her throat as she played back the recording. The whispers were louder this time, and then a voice, clear and chilling, rasped through the speaker. "Get out!" Emily's blood ran cold. She called her best friend, Sarah, who agreed to stay over that night. They planned to stay up and catch whatever was happening. They armed themselves with flashlights, a baseball bat, and Sarah's favorite ghost hunting app, mostly for fun. Or so they told themselves. The hours crawled by in tense silence. The house seemed too quiet. Then, at exactly 3:13 a.m., the temperature in the room plummeted. Their breath misted in the air. The door creaked open on its own. Sarah gripped Emily's arm. "Did you hear that?" A shuffling sound like bare feet dragging across the floor echoed from the hallway. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She reached for her flashlight and aimed it at the doorway. A woman stood there, gaunt, pale. Her hollow eyes gleamed like dying embers. Her nightgown, tattered and stained, swayed as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. Then she moved. Emily screamed, scrambling backward onto the bed, yanking the blankets up as though they could protect her. Sarah let out a strangled gasp, clutching the bat, but neither of them could move. The apparition floated closer. The air grew heavier, suffocating. The whispers returned, rising to a frenzied chorus. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. "It's not real, it's not real." Silence. When she opened her eyes, the woman was gone. The next morning, they scoured the house for answers. In the attic, behind a wall panel, they found an old, yellowed newspaper. The headline made Emily's breath hitch. "Tragic murder-suicide in Willow Lane home. Woman found dead in bedroom." The photo beneath the headline was unmistakable. It was her, the woman who had stood in Emily's doorway the night before. That was the last night Emily spent in the house. She packed her belongings, left, and never looked back. But even miles away, in a new city, in a new home, she sometimes still wakes at 3:13 a.m. And when she does, she hears the whispers. They followed her, whispers in the dark final part. Emily did everything she could to escape. She moved across the country, changed her phone number, and even began therapy to convince herself it was all just a figment of her imagination, trauma manifesting in hallucinations. But no amount of logic could erase the truth. The whispers followed her. At first, they were faint, barely audible, a mere trick of the wind, she told herself. But soon, the voices grew louder, more persistent. They didn't just call to her at 3:13 a.m. anymore. She heard them in the shower, in the mirror's reflection, in the rustling of leaves outside her window. And then came the nightmares. In her dreams, she was back in that house. The ghostly woman stood at the foot of her bed, her skeletal fingers reaching toward Emily's throat. But instead of choking her, she simply pointed toward something unseen, something buried. Emily awoke gasping, drenched in sweat. She couldn't shake the feeling that the spirit wasn't trying to haunt her. She was trying to tell her something. There was only one way to put an end to this. She had to go back, unveiling the truth, with Sarah reluctantly agreeing to accompany her. Emily returned to the house on Willow Lane. The new owners were hesitant to let them in, but after hearing Emily's desperate plea, they allowed her a few hours to look around. The moment she stepped inside, an overwhelming sense of dread settled over her. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a chorus of unseen voices. She followed them, up the stairs, down the hallway, to the bedroom. Emily hesitated before stepping inside. The air was heavy, charged with something unseen. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Show me." A single cold gust of wind blew past her, shifting the old rug beneath her feet. Beneath it, a trapdoor. With trembling hands, she pried it open, revealing a small compartment. Inside, wrapped in rotting cloth, was a journal. She flipped through its pages, her heart pounding as she read the words of Margaret Whitmore, the previous owner, the woman in her nightmares. Margaret had been trapped in an abusive marriage, tormented by a cruel husband. She had planned to escape with her child, but before she could, he killed them both, staging it as a murder-suicide. Her spirit had remained tormented, unable to rest, longing for the truth to be revealed. Emily hadn't been haunted. She had been chosen. Justice for the forgotten. Determined to set Margaret free, Emily took the journal to the local authorities. It took weeks of investigation, but the evidence within the pages was undeniable. With modern forensics, they were able to link her husband, long since deceased, to the crime. Margaret's name was finally cleared. That night, for the first time in months, Emily slept soundly. No whispers, no nightmares, no ghosts, just silence. Moral of the story: the past has a way of revealing itself no matter how deeply the truth is buried. It will eventually come to light. Not all ghosts seek to harm. Sometimes the spirits that haunt us are merely searching for justice, peace, or someone to listen. Fear can blind us to the truth. What we perceive as terror may be something deeper, something waiting to be understood. You can't outrun destiny, no matter how far Emily ran. She was always meant to return and uncover the truth. And perhaps most importantly, some whispers aren't meant to be ignored. The end.